For 7 years, I was the woman behind Darnell Houston. I was his piece, his strategist, and his greatest secret. I had walked away from my grandfather Otis and the Whitaker oil fortune to prove I didn't need $1 billion to be happy. I just needed Darnell. I wanted him to love Simone the woman, not Simone the heiress. But that selfless choice was the match that eventually set my entire world on fire. The nightmare began on a humid Tuesday morning at the academy. I was there to finalize the enrollment for my 6-year-old daughter, Tiana. I remember the registrar clicking her mouse, her face turning from professional to deeply concerned. She looked at me with a pity I didn't understand yet. She told me there was a serious problem. Darnell was listed as the father, but the legal wife on the account was a woman named LaToya Sims. My heart stopped when she pulled up the birth certificate. LaToya was the biological mother. My name wasn't on a single legal document for the child I had raised since she was in diapers. I felt like the walls were closing in. I remember the night 6 years ago when Darnell brought Tiana home, telling me she was an orphan cousin. Because a car crash years ago had supposedly left me unable to have children, I had poured every ounce of my soul into that little girl. I stayed up through the night terrors, I taught her to read, and I loved her as if I had carried her for 9 months. But standing in that office, the truth hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't his wife, I was the unpaid help. I was raising my husband's love child with his assistant, LaToya. I went home that afternoon, moving through my house like a ghost. I watched Darnell walk in later that evening, smelling of expensive bourbon and acting like he was the king of Houston. He talked about late nights at the office and investor meetings in New Orleans. I realized then that those meetings were just a front for the life he was living with LaToya in the luxury high-rise he had bought using my secret inheritance money. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just watched him, realizing that every "I love you" he ever said to me was just a line in a long con. The breaking point came during our 7th anniversary gala. Darnell stood on that stage praising me for being his loyal queen in front of everyone we knew. But the charade ended when Sims walked into the room, draped in designer silk and holding Tiana's hand. My daughter didn't run to me. She ran to LaToya, shouting "Mommy" loud enough for the entire room to go silent. In the middle of the shock, the music stopped. A heavy, decorative marble pillar at the edge of the stage began to tilt. In that split second, Darnell didn't look toward me. He dove to shield LaToya and Tiana, leaving me to be crushed by the heavy stone and splintered wood. I woke up in a hospital bed, my body broken, but the doctor brought me a miracle I never expected. He told me I was 6 weeks pregnant. The accident years ago hadn't made me infertile. It had just caused a temporary blockage that had finally cleared. It was the news I had waited a lifetime for, but it arrived in the middle of a war. Darnell didn't come to my bedside with flowers. He came with a lawyer, accusing me of staging the accident to hurt LaToya. When I tried to tell him about the baby, he sneered, telling me I was delusional and that he was moving to have me declared mentally unfit. That night, men claiming to be hospital security tried to force me out of my room. In the struggle, I was shoved violently against a steel gurney. By the time the sun rose, my miracle was gone. I lay there in the dark, mourning a child Drawn would never even know existed. The Simone who believed in Darnell died in that hospital bed. The woman who walked out was a Whitaker, through and through. I didn't go back to the suburbs. I took a car straight to the Whitaker estate, where my grandfather Otis was waiting. He had spent 7 years waiting for me to see Darnell for who he really was. He opened the family's legal war chest and called in Julian Carter, the most feared litigator in Texas. Together, we uncovered the final, sickening truth. LaToya Sims hadn't saved Darnell's life during that car crash 7 years ago. LaToya was the one who had hit him while she was driving drunk. I was the one who had pulled him from the burning wreckage, and the injuries I sustained that night were the reason I thought I couldn't have kids. LaToya had simply stepped in while I was in surgery, taking credit for the rescue and weaving a web of lies that lasted nearly a decade. The first step of my revenge happened at the annual Black Gold Gala. Darnell and Latoya arrived, looking for a partnership with the Whitaker Group to save their failing firm. They stood in the crowd, hoping for a moment with the new CEO. When the doors opened, I stepped out, draped in diamonds and a power suit that cost more than Darnell's entire business. His glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. I didn't look at him. I didn't acknowledge the man who destroyed my life. I simply smiled at my grandfather and gave the order to pull every contract Darnell had left. Darnell was about to find out what happens when you try to bury a Whitaker, and I was just getting started. This was only part one. You think the gala was the end. You think seeing Darnell drop his glass was enough for me? No, that was just the opening act. Next time, on the conclusion of the Whitaker legacy, I'm taking back every cent, every brick, and every lie he built on my name. As Darnell begs for mercy on his knees, I'm pulling the curtain back on the ultimate deception. It wasn't just a secret family. It was a decade-long fraud. In part two, the King of Houston falls and the Whitaker Queen takes her throne. But Darnell isn't going down without a fight. When he realizes he's lost his fortune, he tries to use the only thing I have left to love Tiana as a pawn in his sick game. Will I let the child I raised be his last shield, or will I burn his entire world to the ground to keep her safe? The debt is due, and I'm here to collect. In part two, the King of Houston falls and the Whitaker Queen takes her throne.